Hi, and welcome back to Use It or Lose It, where I help you keep food out of the landfill and get every penny out of your food dollar. Well, we're trying a new camera angle today. Woo! So let's just see how that goes. So today I have mushrooms that were way past their prime. Not yet slimy, but certainly very dark. Headed towards mushy. So what's something to do? Remember what I've said before, one of the best ways to use up vegetables that are not at their prime is to turn them into soup. Now, I know many of you grew up with cream of mushroom soup from a can. This is so far beyond that. So this was a recipe developed by my mom, because my dad was a soup person, and so there's like a million soup recipes as part of our family lore, and this is one of them. Sometimes referred to as elegant mushroom soup or mushroom soup number 2. Take your pick. So here I have my chopped up mushrooms. I just threw them into the mini chopper. I have green onions. This is about a cup, a little bit more than a cup. This is about a third of a cup of chopped green onions. Our other ingredients are butter, chicken broth, and this I made myself. If you watched the spatchcock chicken episode, this is the stock that I made from that spine and the giblets. I threw in some celery that was not good to eat anymore, some onions and carrots, typical aromatics, cooked it all down, and so I made my own delicious chicken stock. And then it also calls for milk and a little bit of flour. Now, here's a handy tip. So, if you want to save on calories, because we are going to use butter for sauteing these mushrooms, that really brings out that umami flavor. I use non-fat evaporated milk. Because it's partially evaporated, it has a similar mouthfeel to cream. That, combined with the butter, is going to give it sufficient richness to be a very enjoyable creamed soup without as many calories. Just saying, it's one of my go-to things for getting cream-like consistency without all the calories. So our first step is we're going to melt the butter, a couple of tablespoons, plus a little bit of olive oil. According to Julia Child, you should always have oil with your butter. I don't know why, but hey, she's the expert. And also, in case you missed the last episode, I had a follower who asked that you see me cooking. So you're going to see me cooking this time. Let's see how that goes. I think most people's attention span won't hold up for that, but hey, who am I to say? So we're going to add a little bit of oil as well. Not a lot, because we don't want it too greasy. Now, when I was cleaning the mushrooms, here's a handy tip. I use a coffee filter to clean my mushrooms. You can put it in there and scrunch it around to get the dirt off and absorb a little moisture. It's very handy for that. What you don't want to do is to actually wash with water, because those mushrooms will soak up that water, and then you just get rubbery mushrooms, and who the heck wants to eat that? So, okay, the butter's melted. We're going to add our mushrooms and our green onions at the same time. And get those going. So the basic concept here is we're going to saute the vegetables, and of course the mushrooms are going to release some water in this process. And so then we're going to add the flour. And whenever you add flour to something, as in this case, you want to cook it for a minute or two so that it doesn't taste raw. That's very important. And the flour acts as a thickening agent when you add that milk and broth. Okay, so okay, here it is in the pan. Whoop. So you can see mushrooms and onions sleeping together, cooking down. So we want to make sure those onions cook down a bit because you don't want to be crunching on those onions in the middle. And I use both the white and green parts because it gives it some nice color. So I'm going to cut away for a little bit while these cook down. Okay, so the mushrooms and onions have been going for a few minutes. They've cooked down. Now I'm going to add my flour. So, I don't know, about a tablespoon. Like I said, not too much. You just want it to help thicken up your soup. And we're going to get that mixed in and let it cook for a minute or so that we don't have the taste of raw flour ruining our delicious mushroom soup. Now I have not yet added salt. So in my mother's recipe, there was no salt. Because of health issues, they were on a very low salt diet. That was not part of the instructions. However, I wouldn't want to add salt until this point in the process, because if you add the salt too soon to your mushrooms, they could release too much water and get rubbery, and that's not what we're going for here. I'll lower the temp a bit. Now I am going to add the milk first and then add the chicken stock, because I kind of want to make sure that the proportions look okay, since I haven't actually made this before. So here's about a half a cup. Oops, it's a little more than half a cup of evaporated milk. And I'm not sure if you can see, but you see how it seems to have a little bit thicker consistency than regular milk. Okay. Well, I definitely need to add broth because it's not a lot of liquid going on there. So we're going to add our chicken broth. Let's get that well incorporated before we decide whether or not to add more. I don't want to overwhelm the mushrooms with broth. I like mine kind of chunky. So I don't want it to get too thin. Not because I wanted that horrible cream of mushroom soup from the can consistency, but that's just a personal preference. And before I added the flour, when you all weren't looking, I did add pepper. So just minimal amount of salt and pepper is all this is going to need. You want that mushroom, that deep mushroom flavor to come through. Okay. So we're going to let that simmer a bit. I'm going to give it a little taste. Yum. Another reason to use non-fat evaporated milk is because in this case my homemade chicken stock still has fat in it, and so you don't want it to be too greasy feeling like this is. It's a little greasy. But being the creative person I am, what's the best way to cut fat? With an acid. What do we have that's an acid? I'm just going to add a splash. You may want to add vermouth if you like that flavor. But that's going to help cut some of the fattiness from that chicken stock and give it another little layer of flavor. So now we just got to wait for it to simmer. So I'll be back in a few minutes. Oh, and here's now what it looks like. Sorry, I haven't been able to quite get the camera angle to capture the food in the pot, but there it is. So, be back soon. Okay, so it's been simmering for about 8 minutes. It has cooked down a little bit. So you can see it's this kind of nice golden color. I can smell that little bit of wine that we glugged in, so it's time to give it a taste so we can still adjust our seasoning. It may need a little more salt. Wow. Now, an alternative to the white wine, as you know, I always have white wine to use up in the fridge. You could also add sherry because that's a classic combination of mushrooms and sherry. I'm just going to add a little bit more salt. I will say it did come out a bit greasy. My bad. So next time I will not add the olive oil. Sorry, Julia. But this is pretty much ready to eat. So that's how simple turning some oogie mushrooms into a nice mushroom soup is. That's it for today's Use It or Lose It. See you next time. Bye.